Hello, it's me, Julie Kim. Welcome to Bothered, my little podcast about being bothered. Every week I share short stories.
Living like this, I might lose it.
They're mostly real situations that have happened to me. You wouldn't believe some of them. Or maybe you would. Maybe you can relate.
Living like this, I might lose it.
Welcome to Bothered. This is the first time I'm going to read some mail that's come in from some of you, and thank you so much for writing. I'm going to summarize this one because it's really long. It's from Leanne, who basically told me that she moved into her new place, her first place without roommates. Amazing. Congratulations in this economy. All right. She hired like a budget moving company, and as they were moving, basically a personal pleasuring device fell out of her bag, and she was mortified and immobilized. And before she could pick it up, one of the movers noticed it, and he handled her vibrator, held it up to his groin and said, "I think mine's bigger." Then he and the other mover laughed and handed it back to her. So she got very embarrassed and went for coffee for the duration of the move, and basically wants to know if she should complain to the moving company. Yes, I think you should complain to the company. What he did was inappropriate, and I think he should apologize, and he should be forced to actually show you his to prove that his is not bigger. And then you can point and laugh. Ha ha ha. I'm really glad that you shared this story, Leanne, because this is actually on my top 5 list of next podcast episodes to do. A episode about my own most recent moving experience, actually. I hope you like it. I hope you can relate. About a decade ago, I moved in with my now husband. We will call him Steve. We were engaged and planning to have a child. It was an exciting time. For me, at least. I haven't asked him. Anyways, we hired a professional moving company. We had seen their ads all around town, billboards, ads on buses, signage on their many trucks. So we just assumed they were a great company because they told us so. And that's how the world works, I guess. Being both over the age of 25, we no longer utilize the model where we offer pizza and beer to friends who willingly help us move. And this is one of the signs of true adulting, I think, not risking your life or your friends' lives to do an amateur job of moving some of your stuff, which is now a little bit nicer, to save $1,000 or so. We were grown adults who would pay for movers and embark on our probably lifelong journey together. We are still married, and we were going to do it independently, God damn it, and with some dignity. Also, we did ask a few friends and they said no. It took no real financial analysis, although I love to do a financial analysis, to figure out that it was better for me not to be there for the move and work instead. At that time, more than now, I would use logic and no sentimentality whatsoever to make decisions. So I was not going to be part of the move. I do this kind of thing often. I also outsourced all of my wedding planning because I didn't think it was worth the time and hassle for me to do it. Just made a few key decisions and decided to stay away from that whole bridezilla kind of thing that wraps up very otherwise logical people. And I ordered moving services to move us both into our new places. So it was a big all-day moving job. I also included packing services for me because I am not that organized and I didn't want to spend time packing. Steve is more organized and he's more tidy. He had no problem packing his own things. He also had fewer things because I am a child of immigrants, a woman, and a hoarder. Those 3 things together mean a horrible mess is made all the time around our home. And my husband does a great job of cleaning it all. Not happily, but he cleans it all. Anyways, the moving truck went first to his place, then to my place, and then everything was taken to our new place. There were 2 movers. There was an older guy named, we'll call him Lippy, because he was lippy. He spoke too much. He talked too much, and that's just foreshadowing. And there was a younger guy. We didn't catch his name. He did not draw attention to himself. He basically put his head down, and he worked diligently and well. And all that my husband recalls is that this younger guy was very nice, and he was, at the time, a student at the University of British Columbia, or UBC for short. They got to Steve's place, and they moved all of the stuff out in about an hour. During that time, Lippy noticed some of the certificates and posters that Steve had to move, and he recognized the company that my husband used to work for. He shared that he had just moved somebody who worked at that company, and he shared that person's full name and where they had moved to. And Steve clocked that was weird. And I mean, at this time, we're still not sure what the laws are on mover-client confidentiality, but if there was such a law, Lippy definitely breached it. He also commented that Steve was moving from a less nice area to a better area and commented that he must be moving up in the world. Weird. Then they got to my place that I was moving out of. The movers were surprised at the amount of packing still left to be done. Although note that I did ask for packing services, and the company didn't ask me to quantify my stuff that needed packing, so I didn't know to tell them just how much. I guess assumed that they had a lot of boxes on hand and that they were just going to pack as required. But apparently it was more packing than they thought needed to be done, so they mobilized a third guy who came. He was nice enough and he did his job without causing a fuss. However, this one guy, again, we'll call him Lippy because he used too much lip, was complaining about it. And he was saying how normally there would be some warning about the amount of packing to be done. And he was obviously himself bothered. And he was very vocal about his displeasure. The way that my husband describes it is like when we have our child clean her room. And as she's doing it, she's like, do I have to do this? This is what this grown man was doing. I had packed most of my stuff actually, but I had left some of the stuff, like kitchen stuff, like cutlery, pots, pans, plates, etc. And I know some of you are thinking, but isn't your kitchen stuff precious? There's plates and glasses. And I tell you, no. I was at the life stage where I had just come into the working world again after being in school, pursuing higher education, and I did not really have fancy stuff. I would say I was at level 2 of adulting, where one still has IKEA stuff, but not the nicer IKEA stuff. No lack tables, if you know, you know. Another thing that I had not packed were my coats or shoes because I figured those were easy enough for the movers to pack. Steve said that Lippy noted that I had some nice shoes, and at that time he asked what I did for a living. I think Steve said something vague to him. Lippy also asked if we bought or were renting at our new place. Double WTF. And I have to say, as an aside, both of these questions, what do you do for a living and do you rent or own, are the two questions that I've learned in Vancouver are big red flags to me when people ask early on. I feel that these are questions that people ask to figure out what your financial status is and for comparison to know if you make or have more than they do. So all in all, these two questions together, cringe, ick, yuck. After a few hours, they were moving things into our new place. And I told you that I opted to work for optimal efficiency and cost effectiveness, but I don't know if it was guilt or just to offer moral support. But of course I was checking in via text and phone call, asking how everything was going. And he was telling me that things were going well. And I think he had started to tell me that this one guy was acting a little weird. I don't know if I felt badly that I wasn't there in the trenches or if I had some FOMO, but about an hour before they were to end the moving, I did end my workday early and I came home just to be part of it. I walked in. Most of the boxes had been moved there, but the movers were still kind of going in and out. I smiled and I said hello to both movers. Within the first minute, Lippy said to me, "Well, we're a little behind because someone didn't do their packing." How do I describe what he looked like? I mean, he was a guy. He was Caucasian. He was not particularly tall or particularly short that I remember. But we recall that he kind of reminded us of the actor Sean Astin from Rudy. Do you know that movie, Rudy? About a man overcoming the impossible by becoming an NFL football star. Notre Dame. I argue with my husband a lot about if this is truly a really big underdog story. I mean, the guy was able-bodied. He was just short and became a football player. I don't know. We will argue this until our death. Anyways, he looked like Sean Astin from Rudy, clearly without the work ethic. I mean, remember the movie Rudy? Rudy didn't just stop every once in a while to stop and brag about himself. Rudy didn't stop to make conversation and comment on other people's finances or what they did for a living. Rudy just did the fucking work. And I have to say this is Sean Astin from Rudy to separate him from his Lord of the Rings and current vibe, which is, of course, very different. I mean, we all change as life goes on. But let me tell you more about what happened. After he chastised me for having too much for them to pack, he told me that normally for such a packing job, they would come the day before and label everything, and then it wouldn't be so difficult for him, which was neat. Neat little speech there. Maybe if someone at the moving company had told me that I had the option, I would have opted for it. But again, they did not properly ask me to assess any sort of quantity about the move. So I put that on them as much as I do on me, or even more, because they're the ones with this experience. And again, I am the paying customer here. Anyways, this was all very weird and unnecessary because they had already moved past the packing required and addressed it with Steve. And also we were paying for the extra time. So I don't know what he was doing, trying to dig in with me. I don't know if he was trying to make me feel bad to give them an extra tip or something, but I do remember responding by simply nodding and smiling, which is what I do when I'm starting to get angry. And then within a few minutes, he said in a tone that bordered on rebuking, he said, "You have some nice shoes. You must be a very fortunate lady." That's exactly the way he said it. I know this because I have retold this story to many friends and I have perfected my reenactment of that. "You have some nice shoes. You must be a very fortunate lady." And I said, "Yeah, I do. I worked a lot and I bought them for myself," which is a defensive thing for me. I always have to point out that sure, I have some nice things, not a lot, but I have worked for them by myself. I'm going to stop having to make this disclaimer every time. Anyways, his response was, "Tell me about it," which wasn't even a response that made sense in the first place, but none of what he did or said made sense. He then asked me what I did for a living, even though I knew that he had already asked Steve. I was vague. And then he told me that Steve had already told him. So I guess he was looking for validation or additional detail, and I gave him neither. I just clocked that this was yet another weird thing that he said. I think in that moment, I started to notice a trend because in the past I had moved as a single lady all of the other times, and I had had some movers act strange and inappropriately. In Toronto, there was a moving company, a professional moving company that came to my place, and it included disassembling my big storage bed before moving. The main mover guy couldn't figure out how to disassemble it, and he didn't have the right tool. And he kept complaining about it. He kept making calls and loudly complaining about how much work it was and how much behind this was making them. And he was swearing out loud and being really inappropriate. And he was directing some of his anger to me. And I pointed out very politely, I regret doing this very politely. I said, "Well, this was not my fault." And he actually said, "Well, this is your fault because if you didn't need movers, I wouldn't be here." I might save this for another episode. And another time I was moving out of a place and the mover came in. He was an Asian man. I've mentioned this one in a previous podcast. And he said, "Wow, nice place. What is this? $500,000? I might stay out of moving services in the future. I know that moving services like car repair and car dealerships is male dominated. And it's not that I'm afraid to be there and deal with these people, but it does seem to be a hassle that I don't really want to have to deal with anymore. I mean, people always say that moving is stressful. It's like a major life event, but to have movers add to the stress of your moving is like not appropriate. They should actually be trained to take away from some of the stress to add to the customer service. But no, this guy, all of these guys just added to the stress of the situations. Anyways, I'm very convinced that my partner and I could not have been nicer or more accommodating. Steve had actually bought them lunch out of pocket, which I'm still angry about. And sometimes I bring up, I say, "Why the hell did you buy them lunch?" I don't think we needed to do that. Also, while the movers were there, we had an internet installer come, a very nice lady who said nothing offside. Steve at one point offered them coconut water. Coconut water was really enjoying a moment back then. Like you could not go to a grocery store and not see a giant display of coconut water in cartons or with like a really neat, friendly looking coconut mascot. And also it's not cheap. It's like at least $5 for like a bottle or a carton. So he went down to buy coconut water for all of them. And the mover, as he was drinking our expensive gifted coconut water, started complaining about how much he hated coconut water. He threw in a random comment about being a gay man. Like, we never asked him. I don't know why he said it. I think he actually used a derogatory term for gay men about himself, which I don't remember in detail. And of course, I won't repeat. He also mentioned offhand having to do with nothing. He made a big point that he used to work on the executive floor of IBM. He didn't say he was an executive, and I will tell you for sure that there is no way that he was an executive. He just wanted to posture or peacock in some way with these broken, weird, off-color feathers. I don't know what the hell he was doing. He was all over the place. He was like scolding me. He was putting me down in some way for the nice things I had. And he was puffing himself up and complaining about the whole move. And all the time we were paying for him to be doing this stuff. It was super weird. When they were almost done the move, and I'm talking 20 minutes before they left, he brought a tablet to me to pay, which is, I think, really early. Imagine being at a restaurant and not being done eating, and they just bring you the bill. It was super weird. And he watched as I put in the credit card information or inserted, and as I was presented with tipping options. And honestly, I didn't know what to do. I already knew that this guy did not deserve a gigantic tip, but I also knew that he was watching me. And at the time, I have to say, I was under some duress. So I don't know. I put in a tip. It was less than I would have put in if I had good service, but it was not zero because, again, they were still there doing the service, and I didn't want any more conflict, and I didn't want them to like ruin or steal any of our stuff. So I put in a nominal amount. And then 20 minutes later, they finished the packing, they said goodbye, and they left. And this guy, Lippy, did not so much as make eye contact or say thank you. They just said goodbye. Why was I bothered about any of this? I mean, I'm confused about exactly what bothers me about this. I have rehashed this time and time again, mostly because it is so confusing. All of those comments and behaviors were like all over the place. So I have oscillated between being amused and shocked and fascinated and offended, maybe flattered, I don't know, and just overall bothered. What stands out the most is that this man was relatively okay and not offensive to my partner, aside from inquiring about financial status, like whether we are renting or owning, commenting that he was really moving on up in the world, and breaching a former client's privacy. The only thing different about my partner and I are that he is a man and I'm a woman, and he is Caucasian and I am Asian. And I guess that he has a penis and I don't, but that is, part of being a man, I guess. I don't know. He never talked to my husband in any kind of scolding way. He just pointed out, we're going to need another guy for packing or more boxes. Only when I came in did he transform. My partner actually says that it was very automatic and major the way he totally changed his tone, his body posture, and what he said when I came in. So I must at least partially attribute this to being the fact that I'm a woman and, possibly an Asian woman. I don't know. I have to say, if somebody is listening, please write in and tell me what you think he was doing. I really can't figure it out. It's all over the place. It's bothered@juliekimcomedy.com. One valuable thing is that my husband got to see this stark difference of treatment that he got versus what I got from this one person. It was a very contained case study of behavior. He had never seen anything like it before. And I will say that this has contributed to him understanding that women, or women who look like me, move in the world in a totally different way than people like him do. So thank you in a way, Lippy, you piece of shit. Too bad for him. I'm not someone who lets things go. I mean, I didn't want like revenge or anything, but God, I needed to know what the hell this was about. After the move, I did look for other reviews about the company, and there were none that talked about behavior like this from this person. I saw one other review that named this person as someone who did just a great job moving. Fine. I sent an email to the general mailbox of the company, and I don't do this often, but I sent an email and I didn't get a reply. So I actually saw that the CEO was on LinkedIn. So I wrote to him and I asked if he wanted to learn about an experience that I had with the company. And he said, sure, please tell me. We pride ourselves on customer service. And I believed him, but I wrote back telling him this whole thing. And he said, so sorry I experienced this, and that somebody would get back to me. And I did talk to someone at the office a few days later. And one thing that I remember was that this person told me that I must have misunderstood something. She said, well, that's really strange because we've never had a complaint about him before, which I fucking hate. I hate when people say it must be you because you're the only one that's complained. Like, what if I was the only one who got burned by a defective lighter or barbecue? They'd be like, oh, sorry, it must be you because nobody else has had their eyebrows singed off or their house burned down. Like, that's ridiculous. A defective item is just that, a defective item. They were gaslighting me a little bit. In the end, I actually got an email, and this is a paragraph that came out of the email that they sent. I'm so sorry if it seems we weren't hearing your experience because we definitely took it seriously, ! I spoke with the manager in Vancouver who has disciplined the crew member in question. We definitely don't like our customers feeling uncomfortable in any way while dealing with us. And he, the mover, completely admitted that his words and actions were very inappropriate. Thank you very much. Honestly, thank you, Lippy, for admitting, if not even directly to me, that this was not just in my head or an overreaction in my part. You were very inappropriate. Glad that you got it. I got my tip back from the moving company, and that was very nominal. I mean, looking back, if I got $1,000 waiver, the whole moving fee, I think that would have been appropriate, honestly, for the really weird and offside, unprofessional comment and the wastes of time during the move and even after. So here is how I want to end this podcast. Here's a public plea to the other mover, the guy who was a UBC student, who might even vaguely recall working with a weird guy like this Lippy, that I have named him because he was very lippy. If you were a student in 2015 working for a big moving company and even remotely remembers this weird job, I hope you're doing well. Contact me, or if you know a guy like this, contact me so I can now give you a proper tip, not including interest. Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, and tell a friend if you're enjoying this podcast. Also, there's a blog version of the podcast, juliekimcomedy.com/podcast. It's a busy month. I'm in Portland, March 20th, Seattle, March 21st and 22nd, Montreal, March 28th, and Halifax on the 29th. Don't forget to write in and share your bothered stories with me. I'd love to feature them if I can. bothered@juliekimcomedy.com. I'm everywhere, all the socials, YouTube. Please find me. Have a great day. Bye.
Living like this, I might lose it. Living like this, I might lose it.